Reinventing the wheel with somatic practices. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. All right, if you are interested in a wide range of things related to health and well-being, you might have heard the term somatic being used a lot more frequently recently. It's become one of those buzzwords that has become fashionable in recent years. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this vlog and give a few thoughts on that. Now, if you don't know what somatic means, quite literally, soma means the body and tic means of. So of the body. So somatic practices are practices where you work with the body, and often this is used as a way for understanding and processing experiences that we have in life. And this can range from attitudes to emotions to physical illness as well that might be connected with that. And there's been this growing recent movement to use somatic practices where rather than just thinking about these things intellectually, where people actually pay attention to their body and they use their body as a way of processing things and understanding things. Does that sound familiar at all to anyone? Now, the thing is that that's not a new approach, right? But a lot of people who are coming up with these somatic practices in recent times kind of acts like it's a new thing that has just been discovered. Of course, many ancient practices from many different cultures around the world have used this approach. Qigong, of course, being one of them, one that I'm very familiar with, but other practices have used a somatic approach intrinsically with how they understand things and how they work with things. And so my experience of observing some of these people getting into somatic practices and talking about them is that a lot of them don't seem to have this perspective of what has gone before and what is already understood as a result of that. Now, in a sense, there can be a positive side to this, because with things that have been practiced or studied for a long period of time, there can be a tendency to get stuck in fixed ways of thinking and to become dogmatic. So in a sense, taking a fresh approach and looking at something with new eyes without being bound by what's gone before can be a really positive thing, and it can come with fresh new insights and can overcome limitations maybe of previous ways of working with things. So I think there certainly can be a positive side to this. And overall, I think it's wonderful that there are people discovering the connection between their mind and their body and starting to understand there are ways that we can work with these together. So, all of that is really, really positive. I just find it interesting, and I don't know, I guess I get a little bit bemused sometimes by seeing some of the things that these people getting into these somatic practices are doing and the way they talk about it. And again, it's because they don't have this background. And for one thing, a lot of them in my experience, and look, I'm sure this doesn't apply to all of them because I don't know all of the different approaches out there that people are working with, but a lot of them tend to come to these somatic practices of the body, in a very heady or intellectual way. So it's all about how they think about things to do with their body, and it's kind of like, maybe missing the point a little bit. But again, maybe you can look at a positive side of that. It's like, okay, so people who have a background of interpreting everything in a very heady intellectual way are starting to bridge their understanding towards the direction of working with their body. Okay, that's a great positive thing. So not really a negative, just more an observation of maybe the state of practice for some of these people and the way they're working. The other thing that I find bemusing though is so often again, with these heady intellectual approaches that they have, the way they talk about addressing different things, they often make it really complicated. Much more complicated than it needs to be. Certainly in my experience, my understanding of how some of these things work. And it could be so much simpler, so much easier for them to understand and work with if they use the reference points of what has gone before, all the work that people have done over literally thousands of years to understand the mind and the body, using these other mind-body practices such as Qigong, such as yoga, such as, different practices from other cultures as well. And a lot of these people seem to be completely unaware that other people have been working on this connection between the mind and body and understanding it and how we can work with it effectively. Now, there's another side to this as well, I think, though. It's in some ways it's not their fault. Again, I'm sure they're all just doing the best that they can, and it's wonderful that they're exploring and working on this area of understanding our experience in life. That's a wonderful thing in and of itself. It's wonderful that maybe they're coming with fresh eyes to it. There is often a weakness in the way that these more ancient practices are taught as well. Unfortunately, often the way that they're taught is with such a level of sophistication, or with dogma, as I mentioned, and it's good to be able to break away, get past that dogma, that they get taught more almost as a kind of superstition, as a kind of magic, as a kind of ununderstandable tradition, rather than what they can be, which is truly a science of understanding how our mind and our body work together, how that affects our energy and our experience of life overall. And that's a weakness. And I think that's part of possibly why these people coming to this area of knowledge with perhaps fresh eyes haven't been able to easily access that more ancient knowledge and realize just how applicable it is to what they're studying, what they're trying to understand and work with effectively. Because it's presented in these, greatly abstracted ways that don't convey the practical truths behind them. So I think that's a weakness there as well. And I think there is, value, clearly, in teaching those practices from that practical perspective, not getting too esoteric with them, not getting too bound up in tradition and dogma, but teaching them at their most practical level of understanding how we can work simply with our mind, our body, our breath, and so on, to effectively help us understand ourselves and what we experience in life. So it's an interesting developing area. I think some people working in this area of somatic practices, again, some don't seem to have a perspective. They think they're doing something completely new. Some of them, I understand, are incorporating at least a little bit of things like Qigong or yoga and starting to understand that connection. But I think it's something that could be developed much further. And I think there's work to be done from both sides of that equation to have that occur. So from those people who are developing their Western or modern understanding of somatic practice and what it means, to maybe put a bit more focus in their study into looking at what's gone before to understand the ancient practices and the frameworks of understanding within them. And I think there's more work to be done from the other side, those people working with these ancient practices such as Qigong, to teach them in a really practical, easily understood way that brings out those truths more clearly so they can be more easily understood. Anyway, that's my musings for this vlog. Maybe it's interesting to some of you. Hopefully it is. If it is, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things, and I look forward to seeing you on another one soon.